My name is Brian Matias, and I'd like to welcome you to episode number 1 of ON1 Inspiration. Now, I launched ON1 Perfect Inspiration about 4 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. And my goal with that series was to provide you with episodes that helped you get the most out of your photos using ON1 software. Now, a lot has changed since then, and one of the things that I wanted to do with this series was start off with an on-camera component to give you a little bit more context and make you feel invested in the photo. So, let's talk about this first photo. Now, I took this photo in Jedediah Smith State Park, which is part of the National Redwoods area in California. And I have to tell you, I've never seen trees that big, and from what I'm told, they're not even the biggest trees out there in that area. In order to give context in terms of how big the tree was, I wanted to put something or someone in front of my frame. And that's where my good buddy Brian Bonham comes in. Fortunately, he was a very willing model, and I used my camera, which is a Sony a7R Mark II, and the lens, actually, this is a Sony 24-70mm lens. The lens I used was a 16-35 that I'm using to record this video, so this kind of looks the same. It's about the same size. But I used this camera and lens vertically on my tripod and took, I think, 5 or 6 panels that I knew I was going to stitch together. And we're going to do that using Lightroom and then edit everything in ON1 Photo 10. And so, without further ado, let's go check out editing this video. Alright, so let's get started. I'm in Lightroom right now, and I wanted to show you the panels that I'm going to use to stitch this pano. I had the camera on the tripod, and I started from the left, and I started basically swiveling to the right. You can see here's Brian standing against this stout tree, and fortunately he stayed perfectly still. Not that it mattered, but it helps. And so these are my panels. Again, now from right to left, you can see it's balanced, it's even, everything is good there. The first thing I want to do though is apply a lens correction profile in Lightroom to this first image. So I'm going to double click it, go to the develop module, and then scroll down under the lens correction panel. I'm going to just check enable profile correction. And you can see if I turn it on and off, there's not much of a difference here. So, but it's just one of those things I like to have done. And since we did it to this photo, we want to make sure that we apply that lens correction to all of the photos. And so this was taken with a 16-35mm Sony lens. So I can sync that. Instead of going to each one and selecting that checkbox, I can do this really easily. Select the first one, and then shift click to select the rest of the images, and then click on the sync settings button on the bottom right of the screen. Now, in case you have other checkboxes selected like I do here, the first thing you'll want to do is select check none. And then the only checkbox I care about right now, because the only change I made, is the lens profile corrections. So I'll select that and then select synchronize. And that goes ahead and applies that lens correction profile to each of the photos. So we're good there. Now it's time to stitch the pano. Again, select the first image and then shift select the rest of them, right click, and go to photo merge. Now this is new with Lightroom 6 or Lightroom Creative Cloud. This was added in, so you can do HDR and panoramas. We're doing a pano here, so I'm going to select that. Alright, so as you can see, Lightroom did a really good job of quickly stitching the photos together. You'll notice that there are some areas where Lightroom had to adjust the orientation of the photos to get a clean stitch, and that's represented by those white borders on the outside. You have two options here. Well, you have two options if you're running the latest version of Lightroom, which is 2015.4 or Creative Cloud.4, I guess. If you're not, pretty much the only option you have is this auto crop button, which will it'll crop the composition down so that you don't see any of those white areas. I don't want that because I want to maintain the full resolution of the photo. So with the latest version, a new slider was introduced called Boundary Warp, and it's actually quite magical. What I'm going to do is just drag this to the right, and as I drag it to the right, Lightroom is doing a free transform or kind of a warp, and it fills in those areas, which is really nice. So now I'm able to get a nice clean stitch without having to compromise any part of the composition. And now that I'm done, I'll just select merge to return back to Lightroom to get the pano ready for editing. All right, so here is the stitched pano. Before I send it over to On1 Layers 10, the first thing I want to do is crop it just a little bit. So I'm going to press R, and you'll notice where Brian is standing. I have the rule of thirds overlay displayed here, and Brian is just off-centered. And so what I want to do is crop from the top left so that the center bumper here kind of looks like it's above his head. So I'm just going to drag in and stop right around there. All right, that looks good. What's important here is that you'll also want to have that lock selected, which constrains the proportions. Now that I'm done, I'll hit R and then go back to the library view here. And now we're ready to edit. So to edit, I'm going to go to the File menu, then plug in Extras, and select On1 Layers 10. When the photo starts to open in On1 Photo 10, you're going to get a dialog box, or you may. It depends on whether you have selected this option. In my case, I always select Smart Photo, and that gives me the benefit of coming back anytime in the future. I can open up the PSD file that gets created and have access to all of the individual edits that I'm about to make. So if I want to change something in the future, it's not a problem. So I'm just going to select Smart Photo. And right off the bat, we're in Layers 10. The first thing I'm going to do is select Enhance from the toolbar on the right to start we're going to start with making some adjustments, basic adjustments to the image before we start stylizing. And Enhance is perfect for that. So really, the only thing I want to do here is, it's a bit on the darker side, this photo, and before I start stylizing, I want to give it a flat, almost washed out look. To do that, I'm just going to mostly work in here in the color and tone adjustments. I'm going to increase the exposure a bit. I'll boost the contrast just a bit. And then I'm not going to touch the highlight and whites, but I will increase the shadow recovery. And I'm also going to bring up the black point. So you can see now that it looks a bit washed out. To me, it looks flat. And if you toggle the preview, you can see this is it's a really punchy, darker image. But with the subtle adjustments, it's just a bit more even. And I think that's important. The only other thing I'm going to do is increase both the saturation and the vibrance just to pop the colors. And so that's all I wanted to do in Enhance. It was really quick, but it was getting the image to a place where I'm ready to stylize. And so for that, I'm just going to click over to Effects from the same toolbar on the right. And in Effects, you'll notice that I don't have my preset bar open. I don't use presets. I only use, I build my effects from scratch. So to start, I'm going to hit Add Filter. And I hide that preset bar because it gives me more screen real estate. So with my first filter, Dynamic Contrast, the Voodoo preset, I absolutely love this preset. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave under the detail section, I'm going to leave small alone at 0. I'm also going to bring large down to 0. Because really all the detail that I want to adjust is in the medium areas of this photo. And that's all that I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it at 100% and just leave the medium at 15 strength. Next, we'll hit Add Filter, and I'm going to select Lens Flare. Now this is I think a filter that a lot of people don't give credit to, but it's a really fun filter in my opinion. When you select it, the first thing I'm going to do is select the upright preset. And just as it is here, I mean, with a little massaging, this looks like a fun effect. It looks kind of cool, but this is not what I want to do using this filter. The first thing I'm going to do though is go to the little gear icon and then change my blending mode. Right now it's normal, and I'm going to bring it down to soft light. And so this is great. It's just a bit too strong. It's actually very strong. So I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 50% here. And you can start to see where I'm going now. The colors are becoming more rich. We're starting to get that contrast. And imagine if I didn't go to Enhance first, this would be even darker and just a bit too punchy for my taste. That's why I wanted to, bring it out to more of a washed out look originally. All right. So this is good. The only thing that's concerning me right now is Brian himself is looking at the colors are a bit too, I don't know, just strong. They're almost bleeding. So I'm simply going to take the masking brush, go to the top here, select perfect brush, and then I'm also going to turn on the mask preview, which is this little button here on the bottom left next to the preview button. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I'm colorblind, and so it's hard for me sometimes to see where the mask is being applied. So all I'm going to do here is draw on his jacket, and then also draw on his face. And the thing about the perfect brush is that it's sampling the colors of the brush, so I don't have to worry about masking out something like the tree. It's only going to get the colors that it lands on, which I think is great. And just helps for a clean mask. And so just going to go here to his pants. It's always weird masking people I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, we're done for the most part. I'm happy with this. This is fine. I'm not going to be a stickler over the mask, but I got what I needed. So I'm going to turn the preview off, and what that's done is it's removed the lens flare effect from Brian, but it's remaining everywhere else. So I'm done with this filter. We're going to hit add filter for a third layer. And the next one I'm going to apply is another one that you probably wouldn't associate with this beautiful nature scene, and that's grunge. So what grunge does is it desaturates, but it adds a lot of contrast, and I believe it also really attacks the shadows. I'm going to select the darker preset here, and I'm also going to change the blending mode because I don't like the way it's desaturating. I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply, which brings back color, but it also makes the image super dark. And that's fine because I'm not using this filter at 100%. I'm going to bring it down to about 20%. And so if I turn the layer on and off, you can see it's not that, it has some little changes. It adds a little bit of grit to the photo, which I like. But I don't like the way the effect affects Brian. So there's actually an easy thing we can do. If I go back to the lens flare filter, and then click on the little mask button next to the layer delete button or the trash can, I expose these mask options. And so I'm going to select copy and then go back to the grunge filter. And then I'll select that filter's mask and click paste. And so you can see that removes the effect from Brian. That's perfect. All right, next filter. So with the previous filter, the grunge filter, we definitely, made it a bit darker. I'm going to bring that back with a glow filter, one of my favorites. And just like before, I'm going to select the gear icon and then change the blending mode from normal to overlay, which does look a bit strong. I think everyone will agree here. But that's okay because I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 20, 22%. That's fine. But I don't want the effect to apply to Brian. And here's the cool thing. All I need to do is select on the little mask button again and just click paste. It remembers the mask from the clipboard, so I don't have to go back and copy it again. It's just one of those cool little time-saving things. And the last filter I'm going to apply is a vignette because I want to darken the edges just a bit. So I hit add filter, select vignette, and this time, normally the vignette will start to darken from the outside towards the center of the frame, but I want the center to be around Brian. So I'll select these crosshairs right here, and then just click right around here. Then you can see that the vignette was brought down just a bit, so it's kind of hugging Brian instead of including him. And so that's that. I'm really happy with the way the image turned out. You can see the original, nice flat image thanks to Enhance, but we were able to stylize it and bring out some, it has this kind of storybook quality to it, this almost a scary look to it, thanks to effects. And so I hope you got some good ideas out of this. I look forward to seeing you on episode number 2 of On1 Inspiration. Thank you, everyone.